Do you think you've got
Oh,
problems?
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
I can't talk for 10 minutes.
I can. Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and today I'm sitting in a church. This is another in my series of I'm sitting in a church contemplating about something, but I'm not alone today because I'm joined by the very lovely Cynthia Julian. Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, Richard.
Now, we are sitting in a lovely old church which is almost in the middle of nowhere, and I've been here before and filmed in this church a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which church is it?
Warminghurst.
Warminghurst, which is in West Sussex.
Yep.
Close to Thacombe where you
Very
live.
close. And next to Ashington.
Next to
Which is on the
Ashington.
A24.
So I think we pinpointed that quite
Yeah,
well.
specifically.
Yes, and it's an interesting church because it's got the lovely box pews, and you were telling me that they're thinking, or they are doing, camping in a church.
Yep, they do champing here, as they call it.
Champing, is that what they call it?
Champing, yes.
Wow.
Like champing at the bit.
Champing at the
Yeah,
bit.
you can have bed and breakfast here. They supply the beds, you sleep in the box pews.
Wow, it's a bit
Apparently.
cramped, isn't it?
I think so, but it's quite popular here, so...
Well, we're filming on a very nice sunny day. It was raining a bit earlier, but it's sunny now. The sun will be going in and out because there's no stained glass windows, so we're getting a lot of light coming in, sitting in front of the altar here. And we've just moved the bench so you get to see a bit more of the church. Now, as you know, I like to, in this sort of little series I do of sitting in a church and thinking about things which are interesting and important. And the reason I brought Cynthia along is, for 18 years you have been living in a timber-framed property.
Yep, 16th century.
16th century. So there we are. So I thought it'd be interesting to just discuss the merits or not of living in a period property, the things that you can do, the things that you can't do, the things that perhaps on the surface seems absolutely idyllic living in such an old property, because I would love to live in a timber frame property. Having visited you when you were in that, you've now left that. I would love to live in there, but clearly there are probably, things that you don't think about when you don't live in one that you actually experience when you do. So let me ask you first, what made you decide to live in a timber frame property?
I've always lived in old houses. I was born in an old house, which was about 1780, so this one's a bit older. I just like period houses.
Period houses.
I've never lived in a modern house,
No.
so I've not really experienced it.
Well, I live in a Victorian house which was built around about 1875, which, is quite young, I think.
In relation to that one, but it's
Yeah.
still been around a while.
Absolutely. My dad lived in a 1930s bungalow, which was the last property he had for about 25 years. And of course, where you live, there's loads and loads of new builds going up,
A huge amount.
as there are all over the place. And so, timber frame property, the walls were they wattle and daub?
Inside, but the outside is just rubble, in between, infill for the timber.
So what would it be like, because I remember you had this wonderful inglenook fireplace.
Which most of them have, yeah.
What was it like? Was it cold? Was it snug?
They're quite snug, but of course they vary in size.
Yeah.
They're quite expensive to repair.
And is that down to you? Do you, because presumably there are
obviously,
restrictions.
Yeah, I mean there are, because they're mostly listed, so you can't just do anything.
No.
That's probably a drawback, and it does put a lot of people off, because they feel, we got to jump through hoops to do any work or improve.
Yes.
I think it would suit you, but it doesn't suit everybody, because sometimes the rooms are quite small.
Ah, yes. Now that's interesting because
life was different then. Very different.
People were smaller. They had less property.
They didn't have any belongings, so they didn't need.
No, I mean it's interesting because when you read some of the old books about certain people and they talk about the things they had when they died and they list them, and they might be only 20 items.
Absolutely.
Or less.
Absolutely.
And that might have been a merchant or someone. Their pewter plates and a certain piece of furniture and a bed.
And the bed, that was hugely important.
Yes.
The bed, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then, the rest of the family would be arguing about that bed, who gets it, and, who it goes to.
And also, I think a lot of these cottages, rather than the big farmhouses, were just workers' cottages. So,
Yes.
you know, they had even less. Very different to the sort of people that probably buy them now, because they're expensive to maintain and expensive to buy.
And
thin on the ground.
And yeah, absolutely. Those, as you say, I think that's a very important thing to remember. They were built as workers' cottages.
A lot of them were, yeah.
Who didn't have a lot of money, and they may have been tenant farmers or tenants, so they would have rented.
Absolutely.
Because
they probably were in very good repair.
Yes.
I think it's only, and they definitely probably were never black and white.
Yes.
I think that's
it's a bit of a miss,
isn't it? Victorian, I think, when they started blackening the beams.
Because especially the timber frames, these houses, they were built when they were green.
Yeah.
Because that's
absolutely.
the way you could make the wood more pliable.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially when you've got the pegs going through and all this.
But I think with the Victorian houses too, they're very solid.
Yes, definitely.
We'd say that about yours, wouldn't you?
Mine is brick. And you know, you just get that feeling that
they're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. The roof might start. You know, the timbers are getting very old, but that's all replaceable. But the main fabric is very solid, and it's not going anywhere. And it's 150 years oldish.
Absolutely.
It'll be there probably at least another 100. Unless you know you do something stupid.
But I think they were built for a reason, weren't they? Were they not?
Yes.
For the building the rest of Worthing or whatever, I'm not sure.
My house was built at a time when there was, again, the late 1800s, the 19th century. There was a huge expansion. Brick was now easy to transport because of the railways, and so brick was being used here, there, and everywhere, and quite uniformly. Whereas prior to that, you'd have to have your clay to turn into brick quite nearby, and that's why if you didn't, you'd have all sorts of local building materials like wood.
Absolutely.
Because it would be easier.
But they weren't built great big estates for what I call no real reason. I mean, they had their own shops, they had their own communities, even within a town.
Yeah, exactly. So my period house, I mean, it's funny because I don't really, like you.
It is, yeah.
I've been in my house for nearly 30 years, and I don't think of it as a period house because it's my house, but it is of a period. But when they were building them back at that time in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, you'd build a road, and then on the end you'd stick a pub. They built the pub first.
Oh, really?
So that the brickies would go to the pub and spend their money.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very clever. And often on the corners at the end of streets, that's where the pub was. They also built in, as you say, the butchers and various other things. And of course, a lot of people, when I look at the old Kelly's directories, you look at who owned the houses when they were first built. A lot of them were owned by businesses who ran their business from home. So they didn't have shop fronts.
No.
It was like a cobbler, and you'd just go and knock on the door and ask for, I'll have a pair of boots from Jack Jones, the cobbler, or whatever. In my house, the first people who ran it were 3 women of independent means.
Oh, right.
So you can read that however you like. Which
seamstresses, of course.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought. So going back to your timber framed property, quite small rooms.
Basically they were all of them, even the bigger houses, even the farmhouses that I've been in. There's one next door actually that's relatively small rooms. So the kitchen diner hadn't been invented. And I think in the cottages, everything seems to happen in one room. I mean, the cooking, hence the inglenook.
Yes.
They didn't have all these diverse rooms for different functions.
And of course, when you say 1600s...
It was late 16th century.
So 17 something, yeah.
So it was 15 something.
Oh, right, yeah. So, I mean, back then, the whole how people lived was totally different. Totally different. And over those 400 or 500 years, people have started to live in different ways and status and all
but
of
even
that.
That cottage has evolved because it did start largely thatched.
Right.
And I think at some point, I'm not sure when, it fell into some sort of dereliction, and that's when it was all changed and a tile roof put on. So they evolve in their own way.
Yeah.
And now, of course, they're listed, so you have to be very careful what you do with them.
Your house was on a bank, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So your garden was sort of tiered.
Yeah. Up in the
With a well.
And a well, yes, right by the front door, yes.
So again, you know, that's something that we just take for granted, that you turn a tap and water comes out. But when you've got that sort of period house, and many of them had wells within the house. I've often been round funny little houses, and then there's a capped well that at one point they would have chucked the bucket down and drawn up their water.
Absolutely. It must have been really hard work.
Yes.
We all mow now, but I mean their days were just full.
We're so spoilt now.
We're totally soft.
Totally soft.
Totally soft.
Well, there we go. We've run out of time, but that's some of the pros and cons.
People's thoughts on
new
houses or old houses.
What do you think? Are you somebody who lives in one of these new builds that have come up? Be very interested to know what you think about that, because you keep hearing in the news people are complaining about the quality of some of these new houses that are what seem to be thrown up very quickly, and yet I suppose when you live in an old house you're already accepting that things are going to misalign, that plaster might fall off,
and they're maintaining generally.
So be interested in your comments. Anyway, don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron, give us a thumbs up, all the usual. But Cynthia, thank you so much. An insight to a period house.
And the sun's out.
And the sun is out. Till next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
That wasn't as bad as all that, was it?
Oh, everything on.
I hope you're enjoying this video. Why not help me make more and become a patron? A small donation really makes all the difference and keeps me out and about producing these magnificent presentations. So go to boldexplorer.com and become a patron today.